Hello and welcome back to the Comic Lira podcast. I'm Ryan, also known as Comic Stan. I love comic books. My co-host loves regular books, but I make him read comic books and then make him talk about them in depth. And with me, as always, is my aforementioned satanic co-host, it's Jamie.
Let's continue the piss chat.
We had a chat beforehand that may or may not make it into the podcast.
You have to now. I've referenced it.
You'd be surprised how my editing skills can make someone look better or worse.
How are you?
Better now. Cold. It's cold here.
It just turned. Today it turned.
And non-British people might be like, isn't it always cold there? It's worse now. It's worse today. And it's to the point where I have to start putting my heating on, which I absolutely resent. Paying for heating. It's like, this is why, people have the conversation about like, would you prefer summer or winter? So it's like, do you want to be too hot or too cold, essentially, right? So, yeah.
I would always rather be too cold. Yeah, I mean, I lived up north though, didn't I?
Yeah, you lived in the with the wildlings.
I literally did. I lived north of the wall with the wildlings when I was younger. And so you learn how to keep warm. Like, little secret, the whole way through uni, well, at least all the winters, I was wearing tights under my jeans the entire time.
Oh yeah, I've not resorted to it in a long time, but I've got a pair of long johns, and if you are cold, they are the best thing.
My God,
them and a thermal t-shirt are incredible.
So I never went to a thermal t-shirt, but I would, and again, I never bought long johns. I would just steal my girlfriend's tights and put them on under my jeans.
The difference is, I mean, I've not worn tights. I can't compare, and it's not out of any kind of rule of not wearing them. It just hasn't happened for me. But
it hasn't happened.
Just hasn't happened. But I will say the material of thermal like long johns is like incredible at keeping you hot.
It's very specially made. However, this conversation is painfully dull. So we should probably start talking about the devil.
Okay, let's talk about the devil.
There's the devil in this, boy, I tells you.
I do think we should start with a little bit of a tentative warning about some of the themes that we're going to be getting into. Because we don't get into anything particularly deep or detailed, but there is like an ongoing theme in this story. So we're doing Unholy Houses, or House of the Unholy. There is mention of like some dark topics quite a bit, particularly abuse, right?
Yeah.
So warning now for if you just tuned in, you're like, I haven't heard of this, I'll check this out kind of thing. It's going to be a bit of a dark one at points. Not too much, but enough that I think like we're going to be saying the word abuse quite a bit. So I think that's noteworthy.
Yeah.
And beyond that, it's all just satanic stuff and devil worship and ritual bloodlettings and stuff like that.
Can I just come in right on the top? I don't think it was very good.
I enjoyed it. I
liked it, but it wasn't very good. You know? Like the same way I feel about a quarter pounder from McDonald's. I
assumed you loved them.
Well, this is the thing. I like them. They're not good though. And this is how I feel about this.
See, I would equate like big two Marvel and DC stuff closer to like fast food. This I'd equate more to like you hear about like a non-chain restaurant, like a interesting place, and you go, and it's not quite living up to your expectation. Like I think it's that level, yeah.
Yeah.
Because this is Image comic, but even beyond that, it's a very specific kind of style. So if anyone's not read the description, it's written by Ed Brubaker and drawn by Sean Phillips. Common, great creative comic duo. They did that we've read. They did Where the Body Was.
Yeah.
But they've also got like a bunch of stuff that they've worked on exclusively.
I remember really liking that.
Yeah. I think Where the Body Was better than this.
Yeah.
But I think there's still a lot I liked in this.
So
they're most well known for a series called Criminal, which we will probably do at some point. Very noir detective-y kind of vibe.
I worked out the big plot twist.
Yeah, one of them I did, yeah.
Yeah, from the moment they started like sowing the seeds for it.
Yes.
About 4 issues before.
Yeah. Also, colours by Jacob Phillips, to mention as well.
So we haven't used the format for a while, but I think we should today.
Mm-hmm.
Starting with the arting.
Before we get into story anything, so I think once we get to story, we will try and do some like non-spoiler talk before getting into like the big stuff at the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, arting wise, it's very close, if not identical to the style of Where the Body Was.
And I don't remember if I liked that or not, but I don't like this.
That's interesting because I feel like we did both really like Where the Body Was, But I think the difference there was it was a lot more stuff like in the daytime, so it showed a bit better.
I just think it looked a bit... I just don't think it was very well rendered. I'm about to show you a panel. I do this occasionally. Look at them cold, dead eyes, Ryan. Look at them cold, dead eyes.
Yeah, but it's hard to say.
She has
like,
sex doll face. I'm sorry.
It compared, like, the style is, again, like, very similar to where the body was. And I do remember them being, like, a lot better faces, like, more expressive faces.
So that was the only panel that I really looked at and thought, oh my God, this is really terrible. But I didn't look at any of the art and think, wow, this is great. It was very middling.
There was one or two splash pages I thought were good in the sense of, like, the construction of them concept, like what it was showing and the spacing and everything, not the specific drawing or coloring.
I didn't think any of the art was that exciting, unfortunately. In terms of color, I think some of the color palettes were quite nice.
Yeah, I made specific notes about some of the color palettes. I think they were really good for the vibe in certain parts.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, again, it does the thing that comics always do when it's like, oh, we're showing you the occult and everything's fucking red all of a sudden. Well, it does that whole thing.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily just occult stuff, it was all the flashbacks. But then inherently the flashbacks are pretty occult related, so that makes sense. I do like how there was a kind of metaphor used there where the flashback stuff all occult stuff is all in red, and then you start to see that red color come into the present when they get more into the occult stuff. So I like techniques like that they used. I like the opening is they use like that kind of weird purple color. That's almost like a kind of dreamlike, kind of atmosphere. Yeah. Other than that, I think I didn't rate the art as such.
No, it wasn't saying much, was it? I
found myself, I enjoyed the story enough that I just kind of breezed through without thinking about the art. So in a sense, like I guess I can credit that. It's kind of double. It's a backhanded compliment because it's like, oh, I just flowed through it, so I guess the art did its job. But also, I'm not the person who notices art as much as other people, so that's probably coming from the worst person to say that.
And do you not tend to find if the art's really good in a comic book, it will encourage you to stop and dwell on it for a moment?
Yes, yeah. So that that's my top tier. But then under that is, well, if I'm not noticing how great the art is, if I'm at least not dwelling on how bad it is, then that's the mid-range, and I'm just breezing through it, like taking it in without thinking about it as much.
I mean, other than that one panel, which I can forgive one stinker of a facial expression, the art did its job.
Yeah.
It was fine. Again, though, sometimes I wonder about this because we have these comic books, and this is plot-driven. This is all plot.
Yes, very much so.
And there is a plot, and the plot's quite fun. And I do sometimes wonder if the person who wrote this really just wanted to be writing novels.
I think so. If we're talking about Ed Brubaker, I think he loves comics, I think. And maybe, but we don't know, maybe it's because, I mean, he is currently also a showrunner on a TV show adaptation of one of their biggest comics.
Criminal. Really?
Yeah. So that's coming out, like, I think they're making it next year, so maybe 2026, but starring, can't remember his name, but he's the guy from Sons of Anarchy, main guy, blonde guy.
Mate.
He was in the...
You're asking the wrong dude.
Yeah, to be fair. God, I'm going to have to look that up because that's going to annoy me. But yeah, he's showrunning on an adaptation of a show, which is rare for the creator to be the showrunner. Like, normally they get a TV guy in for that. But the fact that that's coming out, like, he's obviously...
I don't really know what a showrunner does, though, because they're not the director, are they?
No, so directing is kind of different. It's Charlie Hunnam, who I was trying to think of. But it's different with TV because with a film, the director's kind of the lead creative, depending on their relationship with the studio and franchise, blah, blah, blah.
But with TV shows, you'll have different directors for every episode oftentimes, won't you?
A TV show director, a TV episode director, their role is more of an administrator. They are like organizing everything, and sometimes they'll be creative problem solver if a problem arises on the day, like when they're shooting. But creatively, they don't have much. Like, if you look at TV episodes, like normally, like 99% of TV shows look the same all throughout, even if they've had different directors.
Because the showrunner's consistent.
Exactly. So the showrunner is more of the creative head of the entire series rather than individual directors. So the fact that he's showrunning is he's obviously stepping his foot into TV if he hasn't already.
Yeah.
But also, and like I say, he's obviously passionate about comics, whether that passion is because him and his artist, but his basic co-creator, Sean Phillips, because it's just them. Maybe that's the appeal of like, oh, you can just make whatever you want And as long as like we've got a writer, we've got an artist, we can make whatever we want. We've got full control. Maybe that's the appeal, or maybe he just loves the medium of comics. Like we won't know really.
I think that's all we can say for the art. In terms of the story, I did find it quite page-turny.
Oh yeah, I really want to know what happened next, kind of every page.
And this was presented as a trade paperback, not as
graphic novel. I think is appropriate.
Was it ever presented as issues?
Nope. Came out single trade paperback.
And do you know what? I knocked through half of it in a lunch break. I knocked through like 2/3 of this in a lunch break at work. Usually, if I sit and read comics for the show on my lunch break, I will maybe read one or two and then pull the book out that I'm reading and read for the other 45 minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas I actually spent the entire hour reading through this, and I knocked through 2/3 of it in one sitting, and then the last third, before I came here, and it went by.
It was a real page turner, quite literally.
It was quite page turny. It was absolutely page turny, and so it definitely has that going for it.
Yeah, one thing I noticed was the pace. And it was only when I finished it I noticed this. The pace is kind of like at a gradient. Like it's really slow paced at the start, really takes its time with everything, and then it just ramps up and up as you go.
As
and
any good thriller should.
Kind of rushed. But that's why I think it kind of then loses it. It's one single, like, it's not like fast here, slow down a bit here, pick up again here. I think overall it was very much going. Oh, it's all happening at the end. Like, I felt that afterwards.
Like the average line on a graph.
Well, not the you can have parallel lines that just go straight across.
Yeah, but you know the one I mean. Though.
Yes,
that 45 to
the How I Met Your Mother hot to crazy line.
Oh yeah, the Vicky Mendoza diagonal.
Yeah, it's a perfect 45-degree angle.
How the fuck do I remember that?
Because we especially remember the most useless information. And then have to make a podcast out of it.
Which is why we're both here, baby.
Exactly. So one thing unique to this format, I've got some reviews from some people in the comic industry and what they thought about it.
Why?
It was on the last page, but the people who...
Well, no, because that's our job. That's what we're supposed to do.
I'll read them at the end.
That's like opening a bakery and being like, here's a cake I bought from fucking Tesco.
Look, we're doing an in-depth episode of a podcast. They write like a sentence for the end of the book.
Oh, go on, give us what you give it? Yeah, they're called jacket blurbs.
Okay, yeah, that's basically.
Give us some jacket blurbs.
All right, so first one, Brubaker and Phillips books have always been about 8 years ahead of their time. That was said by one Brian K. Vaughan. Who they list for Saga and Paper Girls. No Wide Last Man. Absolute sacrilege.
Paper Girls is good though.
Paper Girls is fantastic. Yeah, fantastic. Loved it. Another one from Brubaker and Phillips continue to make sweet music together, broadcast to you in the form of the best comics around. That was from Robert Kirkman, who they list of Invincible and Walking Dead. Absolutely spot on credits. Like that's what you want to associate Kirkman with.
Yeah, not the rebooting of the Transformers universe.
Oh, the Energon universe, yeah. Yeah, not so much that.
Robert Kirkman, Energon universe. In fairness, if you can be listed as Energon universe, that's kind of cool.
I mean, it sounds cool until you read the Energon universe, but other people like it. So
we've only read a little bit.
Yeah, we'll get back to it.
And we like the Transformers stuff.
Fantastic. Like that. That might be my dark horse for best of the year.
No, fuck off.
I'm going to have to go over it, but maybe.
Fuck off. What do I think is going to be the best of the year so far?
You need the list first before you...
I really liked that... what's his name? Nightwing.
Oh, Dick Grayson, yeah.
I really liked the Dick Grayson book.
Yeah, that was fun.
That was good.
And that was just that was in the middle, like smack dab in the middle of the run. So even more impressive that you could just drop in and enjoy it so much.
Yeah. What else do I really like this year? Oh, I liked Something Beneath the Trees.
Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, I think.
Yeah. Was that from this year, though? Or was that from
that was this year. That's top-selling trade paperback now.
Yeah, unsurprisingly.
Yeah. And Ultimate X-Men. You love that.
Oh, Ultimate X-Men was so good. Yeah, that might be my favourite.
Little preview of the Cheers and Jeers episode
at
the end of the year.
We need to cut this out, don't we?
Leave it. It's a little preview. And the other one was a new title from the sharpshooters behind Criminal and Fatale is Reason Enough to Go On Living. That's from Joe Hill, who wrote Lock and Key and Horns. Do you know who Joe Hill is?
No.
He is the son of one Stephen King.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah. But changed his name to not ride the coattails of his dad, kind of strike out on his own.
Yeah, fuck with that. Rate that.
So good on him. But yeah, thought some interesting, what do you call them? Jacket quotes?
blurbs.
Jacket blurbs, yeah. So, overall story, do you want to take a crack at telling us what the basic story was?
Yeah, we can do that. So we meet a character who is mid kidnapping.
Yep.
So she's in the middle of kidnapping somebody. Turns out she is rescuing somebody from a cult. She gets caught by the police. An FBI agent comes in, offers to take her into protective custody if she helps him find some former friends of hers. Turns out she, as a younger person, was indoctrinated to believe that she had been abused by a cult, leading to a bunch of innocent people from her community going to prison. They go on a mission to find the other members of the Satanic Six who are being picked off one by one, and it eventually transpires...
I think you could stop there if you're talking non-spoiler.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can stop there.
Well, you're doing a good job. I think take that...
I thought I was doing an excellent job.
You were doing a good job, and I think let's talk about that first, and then we'll get into the stuff, because it is kind of a book of like two halves almost in terms of the story.
So I fucking loved the opening.
Yeah, this is what I mean. The pace at the beginning, they were taking a lot of time to not only tell everything, showing everything, which takes longer.
But again, it's when she turns up and she's like, is Cash okay? And he's like, yeah. And she's like, yeah, I'm trying to use my cards list. I was like, she's doing something shady. She's doing something shady. And then she was doing something shady, right? And it like gives you a little clue, a little hint, a little look up the skirt. And then you're like, blam, vagina.
And great show, don't tell. Fantastic.
Yeah, really good.
For all the DC and Ultimate and Absolute and all that stuff we've done recently, even though this has the narrative monologue going on, it doesn't give any information during that. And I really thought about like how to get across how this is different from the Marvel and DC version.
So the protagonist's interior monologue poses more questions than it gives answers.
Yeah, and it talks more about thematic stuff, symbolic stuff. Whereas like Marvel and DC stuff, they do like, things have been really tough since I fought that dragon last issue, but I'm really getting it together now, and now I'm just getting on my life patrol, and I'm meeting my friends, and everything's great. Hope nothing bad happens. Like, it's really exposition, not only in events.
That was good. Plot. You should cut that out of the episode and sell that to Marvel. That was great.
You signed already?
that could be the next Spider-Man run, bro.
I mean, Amazing Spider-Man, not Ultimate Spider-Man. It's nowhere near Ultimate Spider-Man level. But reading that so much and complaining about it, like we get that so much. And with this, as soon as I saw the narrative like boxes, I thought, oh. And then
Jamie's
reading, I was like,
this.
yeah. But then reading, I was like, oh no, I realized after a couple of pages, like the narrative that narration has not told me anything.
Yes,
it's given me bits and clues. And I'm like, and this is Brubaker's writing style. Like he loves that. I don't know if I'm calling it right. I always call it the detective noir style narration. Yeah. It's very vibey. It's not expositional. The clearest example of it, I always think, is in the original Blade Runner, where they had, what's his name? Decker, I think his name is, but Harrison Ford's character does that monologue. And admittedly, that's not a noir setting. That's a dystopian future setting.
Yeah.
Still very like rain, night, like bright lights of the signs and like very noir styled. And he just talks about like, it's all about like this city, like it's tough out here, and that kind of, I'm just trying to get by, that kind, and there's again not telling you anything, but it's just feeling and vibes. And I think that's what I liked about this.
Yeah, I found I preferred the beginning to the end.
Yeah, and this is what I meant about pace as well.
But the pacing wasn't my issue with the end.
Well, we'll get to that.
But I do like the way it was paced, and I really like the fact that opening with something as strong as a kidnapping, it was a really fun misdirect, because you'd think, oh, we're starting in media res. This is the story, right?
Yeah,
it's this woman and this girl that she's kidnapped, and this is going to be the story, and that's pretty cool, right? Like, she's kidnapped her to rescue from a cult. She's doing the right thing, but she doesn't want to be there. Like, it's kind of cool. And then the girl instantly runs away and the woman gets arrested, and then we meet this FBI agent. And it's like, oh, fuck, this is the story.
And the sequence of events, I thought were, like, totally agree with you. I was like, oh, this is a story, and then it's, oh, now the real story's starting. But I love that sequence of events because I didn't predict any of them.
No.
And when they happened, I was just like, but they all make sense. So for anyone who hasn't read it, she gets to this place. She does the whole, it's cash, right? I'm not using my cards.
Yeah.
Very suspect. pulls up to this log cabin. So it's not like a motel where all the rooms are next to each other.
Yeah.
They're separate cabins. She pulls up to the cabin, opens a boot, there's a person tied up. And you go, oh shit, like I didn't see that coming.
No.
Gets her in. And I love the explanation of what's really happening where it's obvious she's in a cult, taken from a cult. The cult woman is like, oh, you're going to deprogram me then? Like, obviously been warned probably of this stuff. And she's like, no, I'm just getting you two parents. Like, that's their problem. So immediately tells you, like, how committed to this the character is.
But then instantly lights up a fat bone.
Yes. Smoking weed all the time.
Yeah, starts smoking a giant J. And the girl's like, oh, are you really going to smoke weed? And she's like, dude, it's all I do. Yeah. And you're like, oh, fuck, this bitch has got some demons.
And I didn't know where that was going to go and how important that was going to be, but I think that plays into some plot points later, which is good.
Yeah, totally.
And then the realization of the hidden camera in the cabin, which again, did not see coming at all. And as soon as it happened, I was like, that is the thing that happens.
Well, yeah, and it was a fun, realistic thing because Again, I don't know how much this actually happens, how much people have hidden cameras in their Airbnbs, but fuck are people worried about it?
Yeah. I mean, put it this way, it must happen enough that there's like TikToks and shorts about like, here's how you use your phone camera to detect if there's like little lenses of cameras in your Airbnb or whatever.
Yeah.
So it must have happened enough times. Although we say that, we are about to get into some topics of just because a lot of people panic about something doesn't mean it's necessarily happened.
Yes.
So a little bit of a direction where we'll be going with this. But I mean, if we get to that point now, I mean, like we get to the point where the FBI guy's like, here's what's happened. Here's why I need you. Turns out she, as a child, was part of a group of children in this town who accused, first just general accusations of being abused by a satanic cult type organization, and then blaming actual people who were completely innocent. When I kind of was presented with that plot, I literally made a note of, oh my God, that's like such an original like concept that I've never heard of before. And because normally with comics, and I think you've seen this as well, if they're not superhero stuff, they're normally reflecting, parodying, or homaging existing things.
Yeah.
So like westerns or detective noirs or actions or whatever, right? This was one I was like, I've never seen this concept before.
Do you know what this sort of felt like to me? It felt like a Netflix documentary.
Yeah.
You know how Netflix has a very specific brand of documentaries? I'm thinking like...
True crime. Yeah,
I suppose, but not even like necessarily true crime. Like I'm thinking Twin Flames Universe. Have you seen that one?
Nope. Oh, I've heard of it. It's like a cult thing, wasn't it?
The internet cult thing.
Yeah.
Or the one about the triplets that were split up at birth.
That's a fact. I haven't seen it, but I know the premise.
Turns out to be a conspiracy where they like these mad fucking psychiatrists were taking twins and triplets and putting them in and adopting them out into different socioeconomic environments.
But nature nurture testing.
Literally that. Fucking crazy. One of them killed themselves. But it traumatized all of them. Anyway, like it's that brand of kind of, I mean, Tiger King.
Oh yeah.
It's that brand of slightly over dramatized Netflix documentary where I'm kind of watching it like, okay, this is interesting. I'm going to keep watching this, but also they're playing it up. Do you know what I mean?
Tiger King was a meme machine.
Oh, I mean, Tiger King was fucking great.
The amount of times I've used, I will never financially recover from this. It is so good.
Yeah, no, it's great. Like, it was just fantastic.
One of the best memes I saw was, someone said, all this back and forth, like between other sides about if people are born gay or if you choose to be gay. It's like, what it is Tiger King decides if you're gay or not. and then he makes you his boyfriend. It's like, that's how it works.
Joe Exotic decides that you're gay and then you are married to him.
And that's how it's decided from now on.
But no, it reminded me of that kind of media, right?
Yeah.
Like it was the comic book version of it. It's like, I could imagine these characters after this happened. I could imagine the brother and the sister and the investigator dude sitting down and doing talking head pieces for Netflix about the experience they just had, right?
And you know what's interesting? That they did that in Where the Body Was. So maybe that if they had done that same technique here, that would have actually had that like deeper connection to this other kind of media.
Oh, they absolutely did that, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, so The occult stuff, the Satan stuff.
Yes. I was going to the way I was going was, I was like, oh, this is so original. I've never like even heard of this concept before. Like I was surprised that such an original concept was in this original comic. And then I thought, I better just have a quick Google, just to, if I'm not like missing anything major, like another popular fictional thing that this is kind of copying.
Did this happen?
Turns out this happened a lot.
Well, I was about to say, because there was a point in America in the 1980s where in certain Christian, very deeply Christian communities, there was a lot of like hysteria about Satan and Satan worship.
It was called Satanic Panic.
Yeah, because D&D came under fire. Pokemon, I believe, was a target at one point.
Yeah, rock and metal music at the time and all that.
Yeah, well, predominantly metal, but yeah. There was a lot of sort of popular media that came under fire. And it was all youth media, wasn't it? It was like these weird board games the kids were playing and the music they were listening to and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And so apparently what happened was they Satanic Panic was a moral panic consisting of over 12,000 unsubstantiated cases of satanic ritual abuse, to the point where all these cases created a term so they could put them all under this umbrella of, not only are they the same themes and accusations, but they're all completely unsubstantiated as well.
Yeah,
and
of course they are.
Well, that's the thing, and the way you got to look at it, like, it's crazy to think that, again, it is a mass hysteria that affected so many individuals across a nation who did not have any connection to each other. They're pre-internet, they weren't, anything like that. Either that all these people are having this kind of somewhat psychotic reaction to all this stuff in the media, or like the undercurrent of it all, or it really is a big conspiracy and the Illuminati exists and they just quashed all the investigations and everything.
Yeah, for all the satanic cults that were existed in the 80s for a little while and suddenly don't exist anymore.
Well, so what's interesting about that?
Oh no!
It's not.
We're not getting into conspiracy theories today.
All I'm saying is it's interesting from the outside how it's morphed from satanic and occult stuff to more like modern day conspiracy of like lizard people, or even like a step back from that, but like the whole, elite, like hidden elite who like, was it children's adrenochromes and stuff like that? And obviously the whole Pizzagate thing, like in America, like it's all
Pizzagate?
Pizzagate was the idea that there was this like child sex ring under a pizza place, a real pizza place in, I think, Washington, D.C., that all the political elite were attending and using for nefarious means. Again, huge conspiracy, completely unsubstantiated. That one was very internet born, but you still see the same themes, and it's just very interesting from the outside how, again, the themes have changed, but the actual like content has kind of remained the same,
The White House, just massive tangent, but it's interesting.
It's related.
The White House now have to be careful about how they order pizza. When shit would go down in America, right?
Right.
And suddenly it was all hands on deck at the White House while they were just like dealing with crises, they would feed everyone. And so they would order in a shitload of pizza.
Right.
But all these different departments, the department heads would be like, right, shit's gone down, fucking POTUS has said we all need to stay tonight, I'm ordering pizza. And so people at Domino's would be able to tell that there was something big happening in the country, because all of a sudden they'd need like 70 pizzas for the White House. And so they had to be they had to start being careful about how they ordered food into the White House, because it was like, when a bunch of pizza gets ordered to the White House, something has blown up.
And that's the problem where you order the same food every time.
Yeah,
you gotta
fucking
shake it up a bit. Get some burgers and fries.
Get some fucking Chinese food in, man.
Yeah. But they always just go straight for the pizza.
Well, I suppose pizzas are like, I mean, again, if you're feeding an office full of people, pizza's the logical thing because you can take a slice.
Yeah, but, you can shake it. I mean, it's bloody White House. Like, sure, I get some better catering than... You ain't got bloody catering in the White House? Like,
well, given who the president-elect is, it's all going to be McDonald's. That's all going to be
McDonald's.
That's what he eats, isn't it? Doesn't he eat McDonald's every day or something?
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, and when he gets steak, it's well done, smothered in ketchup, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, the funny thing recently, huge tangent, I'm just going to mention this and we'll get back on point.
Yeah.
They, one of the guy who's chosen for like health secretary or something like that was a guy, RFK Jr., who's a big like anti-vaxxer, but also like let's get chemicals out of food and stuff.
He was eating McDonald's the other day, wasn't he?
Yeah, but his face in the picture, it looks like a hostage photo.
Yeah.
But he boasted about how long it's been since he drunk a Coca-Cola because of all the chemicals in them, like especially in America. And he's got a Coke next to his McDonald's on his plate. But the picture is literally like, I'm not going to live this down, am I?
Yeah. But I suppose if you're having lunch with Trump, you know it's exactly. McDonald's.
Yeah, there's the theory some people have of like that was kind of Trump's like, I'm going to make sure he's subservient, make sure he's under the thumb kind of thing.
And that's kind of his jam, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you know what I found out recently? Coke in America doesn't have actual sugar in it.
No? Well, it's all aspartame, isn't it?
No. High fructose corn syrup.
Oh, yeah.
Because Americans like Mexican Coke. They think of it as fancy
sugar.
Because it's got actual fucking cane sugar in it. Isn't that ridiculous? Because I remember when I was in America, I had a Coke and I was like, this tastes fucking gross and I don't know why. High fructose corn syrup.
Yeah.
I just wasn't used to shit being made out of. I mean, essentially, you're taking corn and like reducing it down so that it's sugar.
I mean, it's just the cheapest option for the companies, essentially.
Well, for America, because America produces shitloads of corn.
Yeah. So
back to the comic.
Back to satanic ritual abuse. Get back on that topic.
We could keep talking about Trump.
Yeah, exactly. It's just crazy that, again, this thing happened. And I always I knew very vaguely of it, but I didn't realize it was to this level.
Well, I suppose it's interesting because you've got to remember nothing happens in a vacuum. And this shit happened within the context of 20th century American history. And in the 60s and 70s, there were a bunch of cults that did weird fucking shit. That guy who made everyone drink the poison Kool-Aid.
Yeah. And Waco,
yeah, Waco, and what's his face, Manson,
the classic,
the probably the most famous one. Have you ever heard any of his music?
No, but I imagine it's terrible.
Yeah, kind of.
Personally, he wouldn't have been doing what he's doing if he was making good music.
Well, this is it. Yeah, absolutely.
Which also raises the question, how many other celebrities and musicians and actors would have become crazy cult leaders if they hadn't have become successful in Hollywood? And the one name that I would put, I'm not saying he has, and I'm not saying anything, I'm just saying I would
Tom Cruise.
Not even him. I mean, he is basically already. I would put a bet on Jared Leto. That's all I'm saying.
And Russell Brand.
We know
Even though I was a huge fan of his when I was younger.
Yeah, scandals noted.
Oh yeah, there's been a couple, hasn't there?
I thought that's what you were talking about.
Well, no. I reckon he would have become like an actual mad cult leader.
Well, he might still now.
Really?
He doesn't go to prison. He's turned full on Christian stuff now and peddling stuff to keep demons away and all that bollocks.
Was he actually?
Yeah. Because he's lost all his normal audience, so he's just getting whoever he can,
Do you reckon he still waits for Noel Gallagher? Because Noel Gallagher's pretty no nonsense, just sort of normal working class bloke who happened to make a few quid. Can you imagine him just being wanting to talk about the football, and Russell's there you need this amulet to keep the demons away, sir.
I mean, personally, if I was Noel Gallagher, I wouldn't be asking Brand about that. I'd be like, did you do what you were being accused of?
Yeah. I mean, that's a very good point, isn't it?
It's a good thing I put the warning at the top because it just the tangents are naturally going to involve this kind of topic.
Well, yeah, because we're talking about satanic cults and child abuse.
Exactly. So,
so the Satanic Panic in the 80s, I knew it was a thing.
I've got where apparently originated from, or where people credit it originated from. So apparently in 1980, there was a publicated book called Michelle Remembers, right?
Which is referenced here. It's referenced in the comic.
Yeah. So it was co-written by Canadian psychiatrist Lawrence Pasda. It was co-written by the psychologist and the patient who became his wife, right? So immeviously, in terms of scientific credibility, all this double-checking everyone's work and stuff. There's right off the bat, there's a lot of things wrong with this scenario, right? Exactly.
That's so gross.
And the woman, Michelle Smith, and apparently they used a controversial, this is all from Wikipedia. Wikipedia is great. Use Wikipedia when you can. Just go to the sources if you need to use it for an essay. So they used a controversial...
Do you know what, Ryan? I must admit, that is the only good piece of consumer advice that has ever come out of this podcast.
Oh, yeah.
If you are a kid in school and you take one thing away from this podcast, is that you should always use Wikipedia but cite the sources.
And also don't use AI because you're only cheating yourself,
Well, yeah, fuck AI, man.
So they used a controversial and now discredited
Can
practice.
I just very quickly interject? I didn't mean fuck AI. I'm so sorry to our artificial
Our AI overlords.
Yeah, this is it. Yeah. I don't mean
I've always been pro AI, like the overlords.
I don't mean fuck the AI. I mean, guys, don't use AI. It has feelings.
Yes.
Be nice.
Don't overwork it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Be nice to the AI.
Yeah.
Because you never know what boot's gonna be on the throat in the future, you know?
Well, I mean that one.
Yeah.
I think that one, bud.
So, controversial, now discredited practice of recovered memory therapy.
Yes.
And that's where the claims about satanic ritual and abuse involving Smith came from. The allegations led nowhere. Again, widely discredited form of therapy. But that apparently was enough to get the rumors and the talk of the subject spreading. And I guess just very impressionable people, and mostly children, and not just children, they're full adults as well.
Yeah.
But what you've got a link as well is not only was this stuff getting out there, but in the 80s, especially compared to now, we had a lot of undiagnosed mental health stuff going on. Like people's were not getting mental health help they needed. So in terms of like schizophrenia or bipolar or anything like that, this is the perfect kind of like panic to become obsessed with.
What I think is really interesting is that the character exhibits all of the a big chunk of the traumas that you associate with people who have left cults. And so she talks about still having the vivid memories of the things that didn't happen to her.
Yeah.
Because they were programmed into her, right? They had this therapist that
So we're talking about the character now, not the real person.
Yeah. So the character had this therapist who went over this story so many times with these kids that it effectively supplanted the memory in their minds, right? And so she has these vivid memories of these awful things that happened to her that never happened.
Basically, they were asking leading questions, and the problem with that is one kid would say one detail, and then the therapist trying to maybe like in real life, like potentially with the best intentions, trying to get these memories to the memories in quotes to the surface of these children, saying maybe that you remember a red room because the other kid mentioned a red room, and then the kid they're talking to is like, yeah, a red room, and it just forms like that. So it's not unlikely to think that they just made these memories because the information was being put in them without even realizing.
And again, we're shown an environment here where her mum was fucking all up for her telling stories about being possessed by the devil.
But what's interesting is as far as we know, and you would think it would have been mentioned otherwise, none of the other kids had that. So I don't think that was even as much of a influence as it, because again, like the 5 other kids, for all we know, just had normal parents. So maybe,
I mean, one of them, as is established later on in the book, was a fucking weirdo.
Yes. And was like kind of main instigator and stuff.
Yeah.
But probably most of these kids probably didn't have those kind of parents. So maybe that was more of a thematic thing for like where the main character, Natalie, was in later life as opposed to what she did as a kid. Because it's one thing if you have those parents who don't believe any of that stuff and then are trying to help you, and then it all comes out that's bullshit, and then just try and get you back on the normal. Natalie's mum was like, no, she was right. Like, and that's a way worse position to be after the fact. Like, what's happened has happened. How do you deal with it afterwards? How do you help a child who's had that experience afterwards? And then the mum is just like, no, you were right. That's all correct. Let's not question it, whatever. Yeah. And then you had obviously the big divide between Natalie and her mum, because Natalie's like, no, it was bullshit, and it's all not just the ritual stuff, but Christianity in general and everything.
Yeah.
And you had the big divide when she definitely could have used the family to help her with.
Well, she could have used somebody with her dad's opinion who didn't fuck off.
Well, he died, didn't he?
Oh, he did die, didn't he?
Yeah, died from a stroke.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, no, he died of a stroke, arguing with mum.
But what's really interesting, I thought, was he's only in a couple panels in the flashbacks. His face is always obstructed.
Yeah.
And even sometimes with just shadow, I thought that was a really great, like, for where the criticizing of the art at the beginning, I think how things were arranged and planned out and presented was quite good.
Yeah.
And I think stuff like that, I was like,
the composition is the word you're looking for.
Exactly. He did not have as much of a role in Natalie's life. So in her flashbacks, he's not as clear and presented as her mum, who's like the focus of her upbringing,
And I think one of my favorite passages from the whole thing was him admitting to her how nice it was working away and getting to escape his family. Imagine being a kid, hearing your dad tell you that his favourite times are the times where he gets to escape you.
Yeah.
That's fucking dark. Like, that's not like, oh, fake story about the occult dark. That's like sad.
Yes.
On a deeply human level.
That's something you can't just move on from, because that's
Fucking
always going to be with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think, a lot of that stuff, like, it's all tied thematically, but I think there's so many elements of just like disassociation from society and that like really broad umbrella of those kind of things. I think getting back to like the kind of main story, when we get to the point of finding out what happened to the other kids, I thought it did kind of set up in almost like a very, very tropey detective story.
Yeah.
It's like, I've got this case and you've got inside knowledge. You're the only one who can help me with it. And I thought we were going to get like a kind of by the book, like, get to this person's house. Oh no, we're too late. Get to this person's house. Oh, we've got a clue. And we're further. And so I thought we're going to be in for this. And then really quickly, it's just off the rails.
Well, so we go to the first person's house, and somebody from the cult has murdered them and is impersonating her.
Yes. And that's though a really nice little detective thing of like, she's like, oh, I haven't seen you since, but I remember your scar. And then where I said earlier about the weed smoking, how that comes into her, and this might be like a character crutch thing. It's like, if it wasn't for the weed, I would have noticed earlier. I didn't have the scar when I last saw her. Yeah. So I don't know if that's like the character, but like, I'm so fucking high. I'm like really late to working stuff out. It's like, or are you just missing stuff? Like,
because you're really fucking high all the time.
Yeah.
And again, it's like when we see weed in media, oftentimes the effects are, should we say, overstated?
I think up until recently, yes. Because
do you know the trope?
They're hallucinations and stuff.
Yeah, weed is acid.
Yes,
it's a trope.
I think that's changed in the past like 10 years at least, since like it's become more prominent and legal in America and stuff.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. But I thought this was probably one of the most reasoned and like honest depictions of a habitual pot smoker I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Because like, I don't know, your mileage with this may vary, humble listener, depending on how much pot you've smoked and how many pot smokers you've been around. I'm showing my age now by calling it pot, but do you know she calls it pot?
Yep. I mean, she's a child of the 80s. So
yeah, she would call it pot, wouldn't she? When you meet somebody who smokes a shit ton of weed, particularly into adulthood, like they're an adult in their 30s and they're still smoking heavy, they don't get super high.
That tolerance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you build up this tolerance to it. And they're often pre-functional. A lot of the like habitual stoners I've known like hold down jobs, and particularly in the age of working from home, where it's like you can be at work all day and smoke a fat J at lunchtime and nobody knows, right? Because you're doing it at home.
There's probably, I don't know this, but there's probably some app or something that you can put on your computer to like, when you've got to log on to a meeting, it automatically gets rid of the red eye. Some
if
AI
that
thing.
doesn't exist, I'm making it.
Hire the nerds. You're the ideas guy. Get the nerds to make it. It'll be fine.
This is it. Well, I mean, to be honest with you, it would just need to be. I'm now thinking about how you develop that app. It's actually quite simple, isn't it?
Well, let's not tell the people, because we might want to copyright that later. You know?
Yeah,
patent it. That's the word.
That's the one. Yeah, and like it's a pretty nailed on sort of depiction of my experience of habitual stoners.
Yeah. It was an interesting character choice for her.
But the memory lapse is definitely the thing that I notice most in people who have smoked a lot of weed over a long period of time.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like more than any other character trait. All of the like heavy, habitual, long-term stoners I've ever known have been deeply forgetful.
And it kind of adds almost like, if you know that going in, it kind of adds like an extra tension to everything. Yeah. Because normally we think of these things like, we like this kind of, again, detective noir kind of stuff. We like the character to have a crutch or not a literal handicap, but something holding back. Like normally it's alcoholism, or it's, some kind of like they've been injured or they've been awake all night, like those kind of things. So this is like an unusual version of that trope, where it's like, if only she could get it together, then she could crack this case, that kind of thing. Yeah. But it's an interesting choice, to say the least.
Can we start talking about sort of the mid and end game now?
I was about to say we're about at that point. The only other non-spoiler thing I was going to say was I found the name of the character to be a bit on the nose once I saw it in the graffiti on her locker as a kid. Her name is Natalie Burns.
Yeah.
And it's only then where on her locker is written, because the kids make fun of her because she was the kid who told all the false Satan stuff. It's written Natalie Burns in hell on her locker. And I didn't even remember her name at that point. But once I saw that, I went, okay, you just even someone like Brubaker, and also one thing I forgot to mention, the dialogue is all extremely naturalistic compared to other comic books.
Okay,
really? Do you not think so?
It has its moments.
Well, like the character being called Natalie Burns is one of them.
It's generally okay, but it definitely has its moments where I kind of read it and go, I don't really think this is how somebody would talk. Again, the fact that there were moments where I had that thought is an indication that the rest is pretty nailed on, but it certainly had its moments.
I mean, I'm thinking of like the positive parts, like what you mentioned earlier, when she's like, oh, I'm trying to use my cards less. Like that's a thing someone would say in that moment, especially if they're trying to avoid the suspicion of paying in cash and stuff.
Yeah, no, it's pretty neat.
Yeah, I thought most of it was like that.
It certainly had its moment. I mean, in that last passage in the cave.
Oh yeah, well that's what, again, this is, I think we're gonna have a lot of complaints more towards that part for how that part that part carries out.
There was a really big twist in the story.
Yeah, big spoilers from now on. Go and read it if you haven't come back when you have.
Yeah. So there was a really big twist, which I clocked the moment they started laying groundwork for it, which is that the FBI detective that she's running with is actually been embroiled in the cult.
Yes.
And has essentially been assigned to bring her to the cult leader.
Yeah. And I
clocked it.
They did try and throw you off, but I think to little avail with the whole him being suspended and stuff.
Yeah, and that's when I clocked it.
Yeah.
Is when he needed to run away from the crime scene. Again, the murdered friend in the house. It's that scene. He needed to abscond, and she was like, why are you not waiting for the police? And he was like, oh, I've been suspended.
See, what initially made me suspicious is the fact that he broke out of his restraints just before she could. And that's when I was like, can they make a note of it?
She didn't break out of her restraints, so she tried to smash the chair. She was tied to a chair. She couldn't get out of her restraints. She tried to do the obvious thing to do in that instance, which is
break the chair,
throw yourself at the floor and hope the fucking chair breaks, right? And he's broken out of his restraints and he's come to get her. But the moment it was like, oh, he can't wait for the police because he's been suspended. He's a rogue FBI agent. I was like, bullshit. He's involved in the cult. And he was.
One thing that normally stories like this, more traditional like murder mystery whodunit stories does, is they'll point the suspicion at one character very intentionally and then reveal why you were suspicious, what the answer is, and then it turns out to be someone else. So I was kind of surprised in this that they didn't do that here, but also this is not a whodunit. So I guess so it kind of has that similar themes of like, there's a murder case and we need to find the killer. But it's not like I've gathered you all in the foyer because I'm going to accuse the murderer. Like it's not that. It's not Poirot.
But we then find out we then get introduced to Natalie's brother Brendan,
yeah, who I found very fascinating. We got to see the from childhood transition of a child to a terminally online incel.
Yeah,
and there was one moment which I felt very seen in a bad way, where he's talked to her about something like at a past family event, and she says, she's talking about him in the narrative, says, Brendan spoke in memes and lingo that meant nothing to me. Yeah. I was like, oh, that one hits deep. Some people definitely think that about us, probably on this podcast.
I think watching him grow old and age disproportionately as he checks out from the world was quite cool.
Yeah, and how his language slowly changes over years and decades. Because it starts off with like just he's like factual about anything, like that bit. Was it Sean Connery was returned to James Bond and like that kind of stuff, and then it turned into like, politics and like I've just learned about this stuff, and then it very quickly becomes there's a satanic Illuminati and all that.
And it turns out he has become quite popular with the people who are obsessed with his sister's case. Obviously,
because he uses it as clout to be like, I'm actually I'm a brother, so
yeah, totally. And eventually we find that he is also very much in with this cult leader who has hired the former FBI agent to bring her to him.
Not even hired, like, what's the term for, like, cult kind of stuff?
Indoctrinated.
Like, indoctrinated, yeah. Because the FBI agent had a wife and child die, and at that lowest point was ripe for recruiting to a cult.
Yeah.
But they also kind of worked out he was good because for that purpose, because he was a cult investigator beforehand.
Yeah, because he'd grown up Catholic and gotten obsessed with them, hadn't he?
Yeah, so their kind of reasoning was, oh, you don't just become a enthusiastic investigator of that stuff without being, like, potentially open to it as well.
Yeah.
Like, you would, if the obsession goes both ways, I think was their reasoning.
Yeah. And so we end up in this kind of rushed end game.
And that's what I meant by the pace of the start compared to the pace of the end. It's night and day.
I mean, I like the way. What's the name of the character? The other one of the Satanic Six who's now running a cult.
I can't remember his name, but basically, it turns out one of the kids who the agent West had told Natalie was one of the dead people who was causing this investigation. Actually, wasn't dead. He's running everything because he was also the really fucked up kid in childhood who started everything, was into it all, and
I really liked his introduction, and I really liked how that fleshed out a lot of the questions I had about the flashbacks, sort of parts of the comic.
Another prime example, he was staring at Natalie when she was on a balcony, and then was just gone after a bit because she was so fucking high. She couldn't be like, there's a suspicious guy right there and he's looking at me. It was this kind of like, she was like in a daze and she wasn't sure if she was hallucinating. Not even hallucinating. I don't know. But she was not in a state where she could just be like, there's a man there and he's suspicious. It was after the fact. She's like, there was a man. And Agent West's like, well, he's gone now. It's like, he was there.
Yes. And she recognized him, didn't she? And it was sort of,
I mean, not initially. I think it wasn't until they kidnap, in quotes, the FBI agent.
Yeah, because he then pretended to kidnap the FBI agent because it was important to him that she came willingly.
Yeah, and this was one of my kind of biggest complaints about this. I think most of what I enjoyed of this was...
Really?
Yeah, most of what I enjoyed of this was the first 2/3.
Yeah.
And the last third, it just kind of loses a bit.
Yeah.
What I didn't like was it was a very contrived series of events to lead to the big plan unfolding. Like, there was a lot of like, why did you need to kidnap the FBI agent? Why did the agent need to take her to the house with the... Why did the woman who was in the cult take Natalie's blood from that point? Like, there was a lot of stuff that I was hoping for answers for. And it turned out the answer ultimately was, they're a crazy cult. Like, that's kind of it. And I did not feel like that was a rewarding enough answer for everything.
They're all into weird cult shit.
But just the roundabout, like, let's go here, let's go to this motel, let's go investigate this thing. It's like, if your intention, once you know their intentions by the end, then if you go back to that stuff, you go, just take us straight there. Like, what are you waiting for?
Yeah.
Like, you're not even like trying to do anything else. You're just kind of meandering with these random plans, and then you end up at this cave. Like, maybe there was something I missed. I'll go back and reread stuff when I think this kind of stuff.
Because when he was posing as an FBI agent and he broke her out of prison, it would not have been unreasonable for him to just stick her in fucking cuffs.
Yeah.
And just drive her in cuffs the entire time and just slap her in the cave and be like, job done.
Yeah, because
peace out, motherfuckers.
Exactly, 100%. And again, this is the kind of thing where sometimes sloppier writing it hopes you won't think about these things or just won't notice. Yeah. And to be fair, I did enjoy the ride a lot, that I didn't ask that for the most part. It is because the ending is so rushed that I went, hang on, how did we get here? And then you start thinking about everything and leading up to it. And you go, wait a minute, was that necessary? Like, he could have given the same story. He could have said the main guy, the kid, the cult leader, he could have said, he's still alive. We need to go and see him because he might be next, and go straight to the cave. Like, it could have been as easy as that, couldn't it?
But instead, there was the whole, like, because once he plays it being kidnapped, she was free. She was set loose at that point, and it's only because she went, oh, I'm going to go see my brother because he's kind of mentioned that my brother might be involved.
So the agent gets the symbol cut into him that his brother has as a tattoo. So there is a link there.
Big leap of faith that she would go, instead of just going, you know what, I'm going to fucking nope out of this and disappear quietly and do something else that isn't this. She was like, oh, I'm going to go follow up on the tattoo thing with my brother whom I don't particularly like or spend time with anymore.
I get that more because at least like she by this point cares about Agent West a bit more, and so she just wants to do anything that might help.
She has just fucked him.
Yes. In a classic Brubaker Phillips sex scene, which we got a lot of in Where the Body Was.
Yeah, but do you remember the sex scenes in Where the Body Was were proper sexy? This was quite mechanical.
By design, I think.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. By design, it was sort of, they were both they had sex because they were in a room together and
she had just recovered from a panic attack and he had helped her recover from it.
Yeah, in a pretty cuddly way.
Yes.
And so like the sex, I'm not suggesting that the sex scene should have been sexier.
Yeah.
Not all sex scenes have to be sexy. Sex can be awkward, like that's a thing. But it was just, I remember his sex scenes being quite intimate and quite like, that's a very sexy sex scene.
Yeah.
Whereas this was a bit more mechanical and a bit more like sort of weird and awkward.
A lot of the ones in Where the Body Was had a kind of air of like false passion in the sense like these characters were like lying about their situation and enjoying the passion from it. This one was like more of a bold-faced, very open, like we are just doing this because we can in the moment.
Yeah, in Where the Body Was, wasn't somebody having an affair?
Yeah, it was the guy who's pretending to be a cop, wasn't he?
And he was fucking somebody else's wife, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yes, I remember. That was cool, though. That was
cool.
Quite fun. Yeah, so they just had sex, and so it kind of stands to reason that she would go after him.
Yeah, I think she did everything. I think she did all of the decisions she made sense for the character and what they knew. It's the cult stuff that I'm like, why did you do all of this?
It makes sense that she would follow Paul, his name wasn't it?
Paul the agent?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because at one point, it's after they have sex, she calls out for him because she doesn't know where she is. And he's like, should really have found out his first name.
Yeah. But I think we find out he's called Paul. It makes sense that she would go to get him. But if his objective was just getting her to this other dude, him fucking noping out and leaving her is a massive risk.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what I meant by all the cult stuff and their decisions doesn't make sense or it's just really contrived.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas she just did act in how I would expect someone to react in that moment.
Yeah.
I did like that there was a little tell with him initially turning her down for the sex because, and you think in the at least I thought in the moment, because I kind of moved past like all the earlier suspicion. I was still like, there's something's going to happen later.
Yeah.
But in the moment, it made more sense because he had just said about his backstory and his wife and child. So I think it made more sense that he's still grieving his wife. And
he's not ready.
Yeah. But as we found out later, it actually is more about she's like sacred to them and like open the final door kind of stuff. So that's why he was like, maybe I shouldn't. And he's like, actually, fuck it. But yeah, towards the end, we get in the cave and they're going to sacrifice her because they think it's going to open a door to hell or something.
Well, there's not. It all gets a bit muddy, doesn't it?
Yes. I did take a bit of umbrage with the Deus Ex premature dynamite.
Yeah.
That's probably the biggest issue I took with it.
Really?
That was the point where I had a little bit of like, come on, boys, you're better than that. Like, you've read great stuff by this is the most egregious like Deus Ex. Like, what are the odds that this would happen? Now, admittedly, it does soften it a bit where we get to at the very end. So basically, the end is not all sunshine and rainbows, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that she has this lucky break, I'm more willing to forgive it because it isn't then save the day and live happily ever afterwards. So the fact that she got this lucky break in this instance, and it was a very lucky break, the fact that it didn't lead to like, and everything's fine in the end, I'm more willing to take on.
Well, because the explosion ultimately kills her brother, doesn't it?
No, it's the gunshot.
Oh yeah, he gets shot, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's bunch of other people get. She has to carry him out of the cave, so he's injured from the thing. And then as they're escaping, they try and get to one of the cabins, which might be the cabin that she references in her early memory.
Yeah.
That she doesn't know if it was ever real or not.
The one that she kept trying to find as a teenager.
Yeah, so maybe that's confirmed that, or maybe not. But yeah, they're carrying her, they're shooting after, which again, if she's so important, probably don't shoot at the sacrificial lamb that you desperately need for this ritual. But he gets shot in the stomach. They get into the cabin, and this what I think was a really good part. him slowly dying in the cabin, like in her
bleeding
arms.
out,
Yeah,
sat side by side, holding hands.
that's when the pace kind of got back to where it needed to be.
Yeah.
And it took the time. It took like a couple of pages of just this slowly happening and
Yeah.
how she's reacting to it.
Because it's her little brother, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like,
And even despite him trying to sacrifice her, she still is trying to save him and trying to help him and doesn't want him to die. So that felt very real, felt, human. And then it just ending. And again, this unceremonious ending is why I'm like, that Deus Ex Machina earlier is actually fine, because it didn't really
resolve
really.
anything, yeah.
That she's in this cabin, her brother's just died, and they're being surrounded by the cult members who are armed to the teeth, and then it just ends.
Yeah.
That's it. And that ending did kind of redeem it a little bit for me.
Yeah, totally.
Because then I was like, if the pace and everything had got really fast, and then again, if it was just all happy ending at the end, I would have been like, all right, come on. But because they got to this ending, I was like, all right, fair enough. Like, you've taken me on this roller coaster, and I've left bewildered and confused, but not in a way that felt like a cheap, again, mostly Marvel and DC stuff, felt like and then the end, we saved the day and everything's fine.
Yeah.
But here's a little clue as to what's happening in next issue. Like,
no, I like where it landed. I did like that ending.
Felt like an emotional gut punch. Not too much, but a bit of one.
Like, the weird brother, watching him die wasn't pleasant.
Yeah.
And then ending on that ambiguity of like, what are they going to do to her? I imagine there's not going to be a sequel, right?
They typically don't. Well, they do sequel stuff. They do series of stuff, but in this format. So maybe there'll be a second one, potentially.
Yeah.
But there's also some things, again, like Where the Body Was, that was just a one and done. So, and they do other one and dones. So we don't know. Maybe there will be a second one.
And this doesn't need a sequel.
It doesn't need it. I think you could get more out of it, but
you could wring another trade paperback out of it.
Yeah. I like to think of there's all these questions nowadays of like one and done stuff where they demand a sequel. TV shows like The Penguin like recently finished, and that was a really great show, and that was meant to be one done, and people are like, are you making a second one? Like, what's going on? Shogun recently, like that was based on one book, so it was meant to be one done, and then now it's been okayed for a second, like commissioned for a second one. So I think
the Tokugawa Shogunate ends at a certain point.
Yeah.
Like the Meiji Restoration happens in 1868, and then there is no more shoguns.
Yeah.
Like,
it's more the story of it is, it's not that there are shoguns in the story, it's the idea that someone might revive that old thing, like it, because it's like the king died and fighting for power.
When is it set?
I don't know the exact year. I'd have to check. I'll tell you.
So is it set before Hidetawa?
I don't know. It might be. I will find this out afterwards, because you need to watch the show, because you would love it.
It's within the past 3 minutes, it's become abundantly clear that I know my Japanese history to a certain degree.
Yeah, I'm surprised you haven't seen it already. To be honest, like it's really up your alley.
I don't watch a whole bunch of TV, man.
No, but this is what I'm not saying you should watch any old random thing. This is like your perfect show in a lot of ways.
Yeah, you're not the first person to tell me I would like Shogun.
Exactly.
I'm literally sat here in a top knot.
And I'm not recommending like The Penguin, even though I think it's an even better show, but that's more my stuff. This Shogun is more your stuff. But the point I'm getting is, maybe we'll get a sequel here, but the idea is, I like the idea of knowing that it could be a sequel, but we only actually get one if creators, and this applies to all medium, if the creators actually have an idea they're passionate about, and not just churning one out for the sake of it being successful.
Yeah, because this ended in such a way that actually a bad sequel would spoil it.
Exactly, yeah. I'd rather it end here with nothing than get a bad sequel later. Exactly. Yeah. But
so this, now that we've talked about it, how are you feeling about it?
I think it's a really interesting way to put it, because I think I have this with a few creators, and maybe you do too, that if you just if you compare it to all other comics, if we're just talking about this medium, it's a great compared to all other comics.
Yeah.
Compared to the best that I've read from these creators, it's probably one of their worst ones. So it's that kind of, how do you rate it in that? What do you compare it to? You know,
I agree.
It's like Tom King's Wonder Woman. It's probably easily the best Wonder Woman story I've ever read, and one of the best superhero stories I've ever read. But in Tom King's, like, again, controversial. Some people don't like his stuff. But in terms of what I love from Tom King, it's not as good as the best stuff. So then how do you view it?
Yeah, and this is it. Like, so I'm warmer on it now that we've talked about it a bit.
Which is normally the way.
It often is the case that Well, it gives you an opportunity to think, doesn't it? Because you have to think about what you're talking about. I came off the bat and said I liked it. And talking about some of the finer details has made me sort of it's just made me articulate some of the reasons that I liked it. It made me realize that maybe my initial assessment that I like it but it's not good is maybe unfair. It is quite good.
It might be, and a lot of people have this. You might have just a bit of a how you feel towards the end kind of defines how you walk away from it.
Yeah.
And the ending was not the best. It was probably the worst part of it.
Yeah. And actually talking about the opening and how they set these characters up and the kind of journey we took with them. If you like a thriller,
I'd love to see an adaptation of this.
Do you know what? I nearly brought this up earlier, but we'd already had so many tangents. But yes, a really well directed arty feature film of this.
And I'd say TV show.
Yeah.
Like, not too many episodes, like 6 to 8. Like, I think you could get a good amount.
Yeah,
of
like a miniseries.
Yeah, but he's show running one of his other comic adaptations, so.
And this would be a cool one. And again, it's sort of in vogue because Netflix audiences fucking love true crime.
Oh yeah, you could sell this on premise alone.
Yeah, totally.
And imagine if it had that meta documentary style to it. So like I would still want it told in the perspective that
like a mockumentary.
Not even like that. Like I still want it from the perspective of the main character. But imagine if there was that extra level of like she's evading the people who are trying to make podcasts, like true crime podcasts about this, and there's that element. Like I think that would be ripe for that as well. I still want this narrative, but you could add those elements in,
and it would be interesting.
On Netflix, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, we can like we're the people who make the stuff you're parodying. We know all about that. Like we can help you with all that kind of research."
Yeah, totally. Well, this is it, isn't it? Yeah, I think it would be cool. I think it could be cool.
I think what it really got to come down to, I think this is basically closing points. We both said independently that this was a real page turner, not in a generic way, in a literal I want to know what happens next way.
Yeah, it's page turning.
Yeah, so it's got to have, I think, ultimately a pretty positive response for that. For that alone. Even if the ending drops a bit, the fact that it occupied me as well as it did and engaged me. Can't most of the time you can't say better than that, really, can you?
Totally, I agree.
It was that, what's that gymnastics thing where they do like the insane flips and then when they land the foot just goes off slightly.
There's a fumble. Yeah.
This was
they fumble the landing.
Yeah, except with this one it's more like they just completely fell over and then just got back up really quickly.
I think this is even more unfortunate. They stuck the landing but forgot to bow to the judge.
Yes, yeah,
because that's a thing in gymnastics apparently.
I didn't know that, but sure.
Yeah, if you don't bow to all the judges, they mark you down. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how long we've run for.
About hour 10, so we've covered it. Have you been consuming any interesting content recently?
Yeah, well, I mean, as you can probably tell from my little rant earlier, I've been reading a lot of Japanese history.
I'll tell you what, while you're talking, I'll find a little bit of Shogun just to give you that information.
Yeah, so yeah, I reread The Life-Giving Sword, which is by Yagi Minonori, who was one of the daimyo to the first 3 Tokugawa shoguns.
Right.
So Ieyasu, Iemitsu, and Iemitsu's grandson. And that has been really interesting and it's made me kind of bone up on my Japanese history from kind of the start of the Tokugawa era to the Meiji Restoration and through to World War II.
Right.
That's been really fun. I also actually went to the cinema recently and saw a film that I really liked.
Oh, wow. What was that?
It was the one about the Magdalene churches that had Cillian Murphy in it.
Okay, so it was I know what you're talking about, but I can't remember the name of it. So just while you're looking that up, apparently Shogun, while historical fiction, is kind of based on characters one of the characters in Shogun was based on the founder of the Tokugawa shogunate.
To Hidetawa.
Yeah.
Hidetawa? I never know how to pronounce his name. Anyway, the Cillian Murphy film.
Yes.
Small Things Like These.
Yep.
So it's about the Magdalene institutions, which is basically where in Ireland, up until 98, it started in the 1920s and went on until 1998. Young pregnant girls would be taken to these places and they would be worked and then they would have their babies would be taken away from them, adopted out to somebody else, and then they'd go back to their families having been on a little holiday, having been away for a while visiting family.
They also did this on Desperate Housewives, which I assume that's the kind of similar thing you're talking about. Yes.
That. But no, it was really fun. It was really like a really beautifully shot film, very arty. Although my partner and I both came away from it with the exact same observation, which is there are a lot of scenes of Cillian Murphy breathing heavy. I don't know who's...
That's a Cillian Murphy film, isn't it?
Is it?
Have you seen Oppenheimer?
Is it just...
It's a lot of that, yeah.
Is it just a lot of him breathing heavily?
Yeah, and like, but very anxiously in that. Cause before...
Yeah! No, fucking A. And then like, there's this whole thing, because he's a coal merchant, and so there's this whole thing where he has a routine where he washes his hands. And so maybe 3 or 4 times in a very short feature film. This is a feature film and it's an hour and a half long, 90 minutes. You don't see feature films with 90-minute runtimes anymore. They're all over 2 hours, aren't they?
The blockbusters are, I expect, yes.
Yeah. So in a 90-minute film, there is at least 4 minutes of him laboriously washing his hands. And like every single time he like gets the soap out and puts it in this particular place on the sink, and gets the brush out and sort of puts it down and then washes his hands. Up until the last time where they don't show it, but they just play you Foley of these things happening, and you know what's happening because you've seen him wash his hands so many times. That's kind of cool and kind of interesting, and like it was a fun thing to observe, but man, was there just a lot of that. There was a lot of like close-ups of Cillian Murphy not doing anything and breathing really heavily for no reason.
But I'm guessing a film like that feels refreshing compared to like everything else we get in this modern age. Something that goes different is like, oh, it's interesting because it's not doing what everyone else does.
Well, do you know what? We talked about it for the entire drive home.
There you go.
We sat and talked about the film and the finer points of it and what we found interesting and specific camera shots that we thought, you know, either were a bit silly and a bit over the top or that we thought were really good. And so, yeah, it was one of those films. It's on in cinemas at the moment. If anybody happens to want a cinema going experience, it's wet, it's cold, it's a bit miserable, go to the cinema. I would recommend, what did I say it was called? I would recommend Small Things Like These.
Well, you heard it here first. It's interesting that you're recommending that, and for the reasons you're recommending that, because what I've been consuming recently is...
Porn.
No. Well, I'm not going to talk about the artistic merit. Unless it's like Coen Brothers directed, then that'd be different.
Imagine. Do you know what?
No, let me
Sorry,
say my
continue.
thing. So I was watching a Netflix show that came out earlier this year, so I only got around to it now. Didn't even intend to watch it when I first heard about it, but just gave it a try based on some recommendations. But it's the miniseries on Netflix, Ripley, which is based on the book that also the film Talented Mr. Ripley from like the late 90s that was based on. It is really good for a lot of the similar reasons you were saying about that film.
Oh, cool.
It takes a story that they condensed already in a 90-minute film with Matt Damon and Jude Law, I think. Matt Damon. But they tailor over 8 hours. It's all in black and white.
Oh, cool.
And it really monotonously looks at certain like actions and stuff which give it this realistic feeling. The story basically is a guy who is hired to bring back this kind of playboy socialite, or like son of a rich family who's just absconded to Italy and is living off his trust fund, and his parents like can't get him back. They can't force him to come back.
Oh, yes. I've seen the film.
Yeah. So if you've seen the film or you've seen the story, or even if you've seen the trailer, you know that there is at least a murder in this show, right? What's so good about this is the character is unapologetically a psychopath and con man, right? Not a psychopath in the sense of like enjoying violence, but more of like he'll kill someone if it benefits him. Like he's that level, right? And normally what those kind of shows, they try and make them sympathetic by not making them so evil. Yeah. Like we've had this debate before about like certain evil acts are more frowned upon than others. So you can measure out like Dexter, prime example, he was a killer, but he killed murderers. It balanced out kind of thing. In this, he's unrepentant, he's very evil, very self-centered. But what makes him sympathetic is in the murder is very quick. The disposing of the body is the entire hour episode almost.
Oh, wow.
And it's bit by bit. And it's not just like difficult just to get rid of a body. It's like the little things that you constantly have to think about and how much more difficult it's even just lifting a body. Like this guy is played by, what's his name? Andrew Scott, who played, I don't know if I've got his name right, but he was Moriarty in Sherlock.
Right, yeah.
And the priest in Fleabag season 2.
Yeah.
Also, I saw a clip of that the other day. Great show. I need to watch that season again. But he's pretty thin guy. right? So he's trying to lift a body and he just can't do it.
Yeah.
And you're like, what do you do now?
You part it out, don't you?
Well, you don't, but it's not what he does. But you just see this entire hour of him just dealing with the consequences of his actions.
Yeah.
And that's what makes him kind of sympathetic. It's not, because normally you see a murder and so you'll see someone like at the end of clearing up or getting rid of the body, right?
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, they're evil. Like, I hate them. But in this one, it's like, that took fucking ages to deal with that body.
That looked like a lot of effort, Sunshine.
I'm glad we're out of that now, and I hope you get away with it because you really earned it. Like,
you really earned it.
You almost got not only caught, but you almost got killed there a few times as well. It's amazing you survived, let alone have got away with it by this point.
Yeah.
And that's what, all those things make for a really great watch. So if you want a quick 8-hour, like 8 episode, 1 hour each kind of show, highly recommend, especially if you like the more artistic, again, black and white, set in 60s rural Italy, like on the coast. So it's a really interesting setting for murder and all that kind of stuff. And a hell of an ending, like crazy ending, like in the best kind of way.
I've also been watching The Queen's Gambit, which I won't go into because it's not a very hot take. It's quite good though.
Yeah, a chess film, surprisingly. Like, I haven't seen it, but I hear that it's quite a intense kind of film.
It's a TV show.
Oh, yeah, TV show.
But it's good.
I knew it was Netflix, so it's 50-50.
It's cool. It's cool. Like, it's fun. Not as chess heavy as you'd expect. Like, you don't need to have any technical chess knowledge to, like, get it.
Yeah, I mean, that you would expect that at a minimum for, like, a Netflix film, a Netflix TV show.
I mean, I like chess, so it'd be rad if you were like... I mean, you come away from it with, like, a little bit of understanding. Like, you learn about some of the openings and stuff, but, you know, it's
the Queen's Gambit.
Well, I've not gotten to the point where she's actually played the Queen's Gambit yet. Because you know what a gambit is in chess, don't you?
Opening move?
No.
Then I don't.
Some openers are called gambits, but a gambit is where you sack a piece.
For me, a gambit is a video about a head sock.
Right. Comic stand, guys. Get it while it's hot.
Gotta promote.
Shameless self-promotion.
Always in promotion mode.
I think that's us.
Yep. Good episode. One for us, whole, one for us, one for them kind of thing.
Oh, very much so. This was definitely one for us.
We've been heavy in the Marvel DC. We're going to probably do a couple more before the end of the year. And then the big schedule, we've got Cheers and Jeers, Christmas episode, which got recorded at some point. Best of episode, which we've got to put together at some point. A book. Forgot about the book.
We're doing a book. We're not writing one, we're reading one.
I forgot about the book. Oh, yeah, that's another one.
We should write a book at some point.
100th episode. I'm going to have to start preparing that very soon in my own time.
Yeah, when's that?
December. I think it's like before the Christmas episode.
Fuck off. So we've got 100th episode, Christmas episode, Cheers and Jeers, the New Year's special with the book.
Yep.
And like the 100th episode is going to be like prep. We've got prep to do for that.
Yes. But we've got a month. We've got about just under a month for it. So I'm going to start that like tomorrow.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I mean, I have paperbacks of the book we're reading for the 100th episode.
And it's going to be a great one. Sorry to sound like it's going to be great. It's going to be great. Don't worry about it. Take us home.
Yeah, thank you for listening. Goodbye.
No calls to action?
No.
You're not going to say about reviewing us on the various apps?
Look, right, we've talked about this.
Oh, I was just inquiring if you're going to mention about leaving 5 stars for us or anything.
Oh, was it just a subtle inquiry?
Yeah.
No, I hadn't considered asking people to leave 5-star reviews.
Ah, fair enough.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you have to do anything. I just wanted to clarify on my own point. On that, and if you were going to email into comicleader@gmail.com, like whether that would be something you might bring up.
Yeah,
at the end.
no, I hadn't planned on mentioning it.
Oh, fair enough. Well, I won't make you do anything you don't want to do.
No, and I respect that.
Yeah, and I respect you respecting me for that.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.